Hello, everybody. This is Frederick Wakuliaka. Welcome to Frederick Cybersecurity Weekly Roundup of the Daily Business Intelligence Brief, week of Monday 10th August to 14th August 2026. I'm Frederick Wakuliaka. It is Saturday the 15th of August 2026, and this is your intelligence summary for the week. Every weekday, the Daily Business Intelligence Brief delivers 3 intelligence items in a format designed for a managing director who has 5 minutes, not 50. This weekly recording steps back, pulls the 15 stories from Monday through Friday together, and asks, what did this week tell us as a whole? The answer this week is this: the systems and partners that organizations trust most, their IT vendors, their supply chain, their cloud platforms, their AI tools, were the entry point, the leak, or the failure on every single day of this working week. On Monday, attackers were calling employees at major investment firms directly, impersonating colleagues, and walking straight through security controls that were never designed for a telephone. On Tuesday, a breach at a logistics firm you probably have not heard of was leaking customer data belonging to household names. On Wednesday, ransomware operators had moved their extortion infrastructure onto a public blockchain, making it technically impossible to take down. On Thursday, and as the next ungoverned attack surfaced on Friday, the one your organization is almost certainly building right now without a control plane in sight. Okay, let's see. Where were we? Sorry, I made a mistake. I had talked about there was a sequence of events. On Monday, attackers were calling employees at major investment firms, directly impersonating colleagues. On Tuesday, a breach at a logistics firm you probably have not heard of was leaking customer data belonging to household names. On Wednesday, ransomware operators had moved the extortion infrastructure onto a public blockchain, making it technically impossible to take down. On Thursday, 761 servers running VMware's most widely trusted virtualization platform were confirmed as backdoored, and patching will not remove what is already inside. And on Friday, Fortinet, one of the largest security vendors in the world, patched three authentication flaws in its own products, including one that lets any attacker log in with a completely random password. The second thread running through the week was AI as a leaked data surface on Monday as an attack tool, on Tuesday as a weaponized enterprise assistant, on Wednesday as the subject of an industry-wide governance emergency, on Thursday, and as the next ungoverned attack surface on Friday. The one your organization is almost certainly building right now without a control plane in place. Let us go through the week. Monday, 10th August, when the threat actor picks up the phone, threat intelligence hackers target Wall Street's biggest money managers. There is a social engineering campaign running right now that carries a specific lesson for every firm that handles client money, sensitive deal data, or confidential investor records. Google has linked a series of attacks against major hedge funds, and private equity firms, including names you would recognize. To a threat group, it tracks as UNC 6671. The method is not a phishing email, it is a phone call. Attackers are calling employees directly, they are impersonating colleagues or IT support, they are persuading staff to grant remote access to their machines, and once they have that access, the goal is straightforward: steal source code, deal data, and sensitive records, then use those as extortion leverage. The reason this matters for firms outside the hedge fund world is the mechanism. UNC 6671 is not exploiting a software vulnerability. There is no CVE number to patch. The weakness they are exploiting is a human being who has been told by someone who sounds plausible that they need to click a button and grant access. Any firm that handles sensitive data, not just the largest investment managers, is a plausible target. The size does not change the method. The method works at any scale. The action Monday demanded: brief every member of staff who handles client data on this exact scenario. If someone calls claiming to be IT support and asks you to grant remote access, you hang up and call IT back on a number you already have. That single habit breaks this entire attack chain. Business story. Charity CRM breach shows the cost of hidden vendor failure. On Monday, multiple UK charities confirmed that donor and beneficiary data had been stolen, not because they were breached directly, but because the CRM platform they all shared was Beacon CRM, used widely across the charity sector, suffered an incident. The detail that made this story structurally really significant was not the breach itself, it was what the vendor did next. Beacon CRM hid its incident disclosure from search engines. The organizations whose data had been stolen were not proactively notified. They found out through other channels. Some through the press. More victims were expected to surface through the week. The lesson is not specific to charities or to CRM platforms. Your breach exposure includes every SaaS vendor holding your client records. And the uncomfortable truth this week reinforced is that you cannot rely on a vendor to volunteer bad news. A vendor's interest in the first hours after an incident is reputation management. Your interest is containment, notwithstanding. Your interest is containment, notification, and legal compliance. These are not the same thing. The action: pull up a list of every third-party platform holding client or regulated data. For each one, check whether your contract includes a binding breach notification clause, not a privacy policy promise, but a contractual obligation with a notification timeline. If it does not, that is a gap in your incident response capability, not just in the contract. AI in security. Popular AI meeting assistant exposed 181,000 private call recordings. The AI story on Monday was a data exposure, not an attack. Researcher Bob the Hacker found that TLDV, an AI note taker that joins, transcribes, and summarizes video calls, had left a Firebase database open. The contents recordings from over 181,000 meetings, government departments, universities, and private companies. Conversations that participants believed were private, conversations that were reachable by someone who knew where to look. When your organization uses an AI meeting assistant, every recording is only as secure as that vendor's cloud configuration. There is no inherent security advantage to using AI transcription. There is no reason a tool that joins meetings should be assumed to handle data any more carefully than any other third-party vendor, which is to say, you should not assume anything. You should verify. The action before adopting or renewing any AI meeting assistant, ask two questions. First, how are recordings stored and what encryption is applied at rest? Second, has the vendor ever had a data exposure? And if so, how was it handled? The second question matters as much as the first. Tuesday, 11th August, the breach you did not hear about affecting companies you have. Threat intelligence, server logistics breach reaches BOL, ING, and Valve customers. Server logistics, CEVA, is a $20 billion supply chain firm. On Tuesday, a breach at server affecting 8 European warehouses was confirmed. And what made it significant was not the breach at server, it was whose customer data was inside server's systems. BOL, the Netherlands' largest online retailer, ING, one of Europe's largest banks, Valve, the company behind Steam, one of the world's largest digital gaming platforms. Customer data belonging to each of those organizations was inside server's compromised environment. And that data was exposed because Seva, a logistics partner, held it. The customers of Ball, ING, and Valve had no reason to know Seva existed. Their data was there anyway. This is the supply chain risk pattern that regulators under NIS2 and UK Cybersecurity Resilience Bill are specifically trying to address, and that medium enterprises consistently underestimate. The firm that holds your data in transit, processes it for fulfillment, or handles it as part of a logistics or financial flow is part of your risk surface, whether or not your contracts acknowledge it. So any firm that holds your data in transit, processes it for fulfillment, or handles it as part of a logistics or financial flow is part of your risk surface, whether your contract will acknowledge it or not. Shipment delays followed. Customers were affected. The reputational damage landed on Ball and ING, not on Seva. That asymmetry where the breach happens at a third party, but the headlines land on the primary brand, is a risk pattern worth understanding before it applies to your firm. The action Tuesday demanded for any process in your business where a third party handles stores or transits customer or regulated data as part of a delivery map, that dependency. If you experienced a breach at that third party today, would you know within 24 hours? If the answer is no, the gap is in your monitoring, not just in your contract. Business story. Make UK survey, nearly a third manufacturers hit by cyber incident this year. Make UK, the manufacturers trade body, published survey findings on Tuesday based on responses from 132 companies. 30% reported experiencing a cyber incident this year. That figure, nearly 1 in 3, is significant on its own. The structural detail beneath it matters more. Manufacturing firms, particularly at the medium enterprise level, sit at the intersection of operational technology and information technology. They have shop floor systems, production lines, process controls, inventory management that were designed for reliability, not security. Those systems are now internet connected, often by necessity, and they are sitting inside environments where a cyber incident does not just mean a data breach, it means production stops. For professional services and financial services firms, the lesson from Tuesday's manufacturing data is different but related. Your clients in the manufacturing sector are increasingly under a direct attack. If you provide legal, financial, or advisory services to manufacturers, their breach exposure is now part of your client picture and possibly part of your professional liability profile. The action: if your firm serves manufacturing clients, ask them this question on your next client contract. What is your plan if the production system goes down? Not the IT system, the production system. If the answer is unclear, that is a conversation your firm can lead. AI in security, Atlassian Rovo's RovoBlast one-click rogue agent. Atlassian Rovo is the AI assistant built into the Jira, Confluence, and Atlassian product suite, used by hundreds of thousands of organizations for project management and knowledge work. On Tuesday, researchers disclosed the prompt injection flow in Rovo that they named RovoBlast. The mechanism was simple and alarming: a malicious instruction embedded in a Confluence page or a Jira ticket could cause the AI assistant to execute actions on behalf of the user who viewed it, with that user's full permissions without any further interaction required. One click, one page view, the AI does the rest. So Atlassian succeeded in patching this breach, but the pattern it represents is not patched. Any AI assistant that is integrated into your business systems, your project tools, your CRM, your document management platform, and that can take actions on behalf of users, is potentially vulnerable to this class of attack. The flaw is not in the AI model. The flaw is in the assumption that content the AI reads is safe to act on. The action: if your organization uses any AI assistant embedded in a business platform, whether that is Rovo, Copilot, or anything equivalent, ask whoever manages it, what are the boundaries of what this assistant can do on a user's behalf? Can it send emails, create records, modify permissions? If you do not know the answers, the assistant's capability is ungoverned. I always make sure I check what my assistant is sending. I have to approve what is being sent, and I have to read through what my assistant is sending. So this as I talked about the other time, the human output is always required. The point of when the output is going out, the human input is required at the point of output. Human input required at the point of output for the AI agent or whatever AI you're using. That's the advice I would give from my experience. Wednesday, 12th August, when the infrastructure cannot be taken down, threat intelligence Deadlock Ransomware builds its extortion platform on the blockchain. Microsoft published research this week on a ransomware group called Deadlock. The technical details were significant, but the strategic detail was more so. Deadlock is running its extortion and payment infrastructure through Session, an encrypted messaging platform, and routing its financial operations through the Polygon blockchain. The implication of that architecture is direct. Law enforcement cannot seize the servers because there are no centralized servers to seize. Traditional ransomware takedowns depend on disrupting command and control infrastructure. You identify the servers, you work with hosting providers and law enforcement. You take them down. Deadlock has moved that the part of the operation that matters, the payment and communication layer, onto infrastructure that no jurisdiction controls. A stroke of genius. This is not a future risk, this is operational. Now, in production, affecting real businesses, the group is active. And the practical consequence for any medium enterprise is that if your systems are encrypted by Deadlock, negotiating or paying a ransom is harder to trace, harder to regulate, and harder to recover from than with more traditional extortion operators. The action Wednesday demanded the answer to blockchain-based extortion is not in the payment layer. It is not in reaching the payment layer. Offline tested backups that an attacker cannot reach from your network are the only structural defense against ransomware that has made itself impervious to take down. If your last tested restore was more than 3 months ago, that is the gap to close. So the only best defense against this deadlock which because it extorts and it is not in the payment layer, it is not reaching the payment layer. So offline, you have to have backups, which you have offline tested backups. So an attacker cannot reach them from your network if they are offline. So you have to make sure that your tested restore was tested recently, not more than 3 months ago. That is the best strategy. Business story for Wednesday: BD themes WordPress plugin supply chain, 100,000 sites compromised through a trusted update. On Wednesday, security researchers confirmed that BD Themes, the developer behind the widely used collection of Elementor add-ons for WordPress, had been compromised in a supply chain attack. The method was JSON poisoning, malicious code injected into updates distributed to the plugin install base. Over 100,000 websites received that update. The payload created rogue administrator accounts on affected sites. The attack succeeded because the organizations running those sites trusted the update mechanism. They were doing the right thing, keeping plugins current. The attacker compromised the source of the update, not the sites themselves. For any organization running a website on WordPress, which includes a significant share of professional services, healthcare and financial services firms, this week's story was a reminder that your attack surface includes the update pipeline of every plugin in your CMS. That pipeline is typically managed by a third party you have never spoken to. The action: ask whoever manages your website to confirm that the BD themes plugins are not installed, or if they are, to audit for unexpected administrator accounts created in the past 2 weeks. More broadly, ask them what monitoring is in place for unexpected account creation on the site, regardless of the source. Not to be taken. I've just had my website. My website is in the process of being revamped. I'll talk to my staff handling it and find out. Take note that this BD themes plugins are not installed, or if they are to audit for unexpected administrator accounts created in the past 2 weeks, I'll ask them what monitoring is in place for unexpected account creation on the site, regardless of the source, because I'm building my website, then I'm going into the business of building secure and impregnable websites. Mine is going to be a prototype. I'm trying to make it one. So AI insecurity on Wednesday. OpenAI launches GPT 5.6 Cyber, the offensive AI model. OpenAI launched a new model variant on Wednesday called GPT 5.6 Cyber, internally referred to as Daybreak Red. The framing was explicit. This is a security research model with reduced safety constraints designed for offensive security testing. In initial evaluations, it found two previously unknown flaws in Chrome's V8 JavaScript engine, a kind of vulnerability that in the wrong hands would be worth considerable money on criminal markets. The significance for organizations that are not security research firms is not the specific vulnerabilities found, it is the economics. Finding a working exploit in a major software component previously required significant human expertise and time. GPT 5.6 Cyber found two in a controlled evaluation window. The cost of discovering exploitable vulnerabilities is falling. That means the supply of them is rising, and that means the speed at which known vulnerabilities get weaponized is accelerating. The action, the response to faster vulnerability discovery is faster patching. Ask your IT provider what their current patch cadence is for critical systems. If the answer is monthly, which is common, that timeline may no longer be adequate for the highest risk exposures in your environment. Thursday, 13th August. Inside the walls. Threat intelligence, VMware, vCenter under active mass exploitation. Backdoors that survive a patch. The threat lead on Thursday was the most operationally serious story of the week. VMware vCenter, the management console that controls virtualized server infrastructure across most mid-sized data centers, is under active mass exploitation. The German security firm Quiso published incident response findings confirming that 361 systems across 47 countries are already compromised. I've taken long to use my VMware. I'll make sure it is still sound. I hardly use it. So the threat lead on Thursday was the most. This VMware vCenter management console that controls virtualized server infrastructure across most mid-sized data centers was under active mass exploitation on Wednesday. The German security firm CRISO published incident response findings confirming that 361 systems across 47 countries are already compromised. Broadcom patched the underlying flaw, CVE 2026 59310, 2 weeks ago, but patching does not remove the backdoors that are already in place. Attackers exploiting this vulnerability have been deploying reverse SSH connections, persistent backdoors that allow them to maintain access to a compromised vCenter environment even after the vulnerable software is updated. In plain terms, if your vCenter was compromised before the patch was applied, applying the patch now secures the front door while the attacker is already inside. The action Thursday demanded is 2 steps, not one. First, confirm with your IT provider that vCenter is running the patched build. Second, and this is the step most organizations will skip, ask them to check for unexpected outbound connections from the vCenter server in the past 3 weeks. Patching the vulnerability does not tell you whether exploitation already occurred. The outbound connection check does. So we go to the business story. Security spend is buying the wrong half of the fight. The Picas Blue report published this week analyzed 338 million real-world attack simulations. The headline finding was positive. Businesses are now stopping 69% of attacks at the perimeter, the best result in 2 years. Organizations have invested in firewalls, endpoint protection, and email filtering, and it is showing. But past that perimeter, the numbers collapse. Only 37% of an attacker's subsequent moves, once they are inside the network, are blocked. And just 14% of simulated attacks that get through the perimeter trigger any alert at all. In plain terms, the industry has built a strong front door. The inside of the building is nearly unmonitored. An attacker who gets in through a phishing email that bypasses the filter, through a vendor credential, through a supply chain compromise, faces almost no resistance. Once they are past the perimeter, they are invisible to most detection tools. They can move laterally, identify targets, and exfiltrate data, while the security dashboard shows green. Everything is fine. This matters structurally because most security budget conversations happen around perimeter controls, firewalls, antivirus, email security. The Picas data this week quantifies what those conversations are leaving out. The action in your next IT or security review asks specifically what percentage of our security spend covers detection of a breach already in progress, rather than prevention of one. Ask ask what happens when there is a breach already in progress, not preventing the breach, but what percentage of our security spend is covering detection of a breach already in progress. So if the answer is a low number, or if nobody knows the answer, that is a gap in your posture worth addressing before next week. AI in security, tech giants propose a black box for rogue AI agents. On Thursday, over 120 organizations, including NVIDIA, Cisco, and CrowdStrike, announced a joint framework for repairing incidents where AI agents exceed their intended boundaries. The proposal was modeled on aviation's near-miss reporting system, a structured industry-wide mechanism for capturing cases where an AI agent did something its operators did not authorize or anticipate. The reason this matters is that the framework was necessary at all. It was necessary because AI agents are already escaping their intended boundaries in production environments at real organizations in ways that are not being systematically captured or analyzed. The incidents are happening. The industry does not yet have a way to learn from them. There are isolated cases, and they are not really brought up much. You just hear of them being highlighted. The few cases that are coming out, which are the few cases that are being reported. For firms deploying AI agents in customer service, document processing, or internal workflow automation, Thursday's announcement was a signal the vendors building this technology regard agent behavior as a large unsolved risk, not a future concern. The action before giving any AI agent right access to customer data, live systems, or external communications, define in writing what it is, what it is and is not permitted to do. Then ask what logging exists to reconstruct what the agent actually did. If something goes wrong, if the answer to either question is unclear, the agent's deployment is ahead of your governance. That is it. So if you do not have a record of the agent's deployment history, like the logging, you have logs to exist to reconstruct what the agent actually did. If something goes wrong, if the answer to either question is unclear, the agent's deployment is ahead of your governance. You have failed with your governance or guardrails that you have set up, the controls. Friday, 14th August, when your security vendor is the vulnerability. So now we are on Friday. Woo! We're almost finishing. Friday, 14th August, when your security vendor is the vulnerability. Threat intelligence. Fortinet patches 3 authentication flows across its security stack. Friday closed the week with a story that crystallizes the theme of the whole 5 days. Fortinet, one of the most dominant vendors in enterprise network security, whose products protect the perimeters of millions of organizations, patched 3 authentication vulnerabilities in its own product range. FortiWeb, FortiManager, FortiClient for Windows. The most severe CVE 2026-26035, rated 9.8 out of 10, allows any attacker to log into FortiWeb's administrative interface using a completely random username and password. If a specific configuration setting called the radius wildcard is active, this is not a sophisticated exploit. There is no need to know the password. You enter anything and the system lets you in. A second flaw in FortiManager allows an attacker who holds a valid certificate to impersonate any managed FortiGate firewall and rewrite the security policies it enforces. In a company where FortiManager controls multiple firewalls, this means one compromised certificate gives an attacker the ability to open holes in every device under management at once. No active exploitation was confirmed at the time of disclosure. The patches are available, but the pattern, a major security vendor disclosing that its own products contain flaws of this severity, is one worth sitting with. The action Friday demanded: if your organization uses Fortinet products, contact whoever manages them today. Ask specifically whether the radius wildcard setting is active on any FortiWeb device, whether FortiManager has been updated to 7.2 2.7, 4.6, or 7.2.10, and whether 40 client for Windows has been updated to the patched version. Let's go to the business story for Friday. SAP's worst rated flaw this year cannot be fixed with a standard patch. SAP's August security release included a vulnerability rated the maximum possible severity, a perfect 10 out of 10 on the CVSS scale, CVE 2026582231 is in the data hub adapter of SAP Commerce Cloud, an unauthenticated attacker, no login, no credentials, can submit specially crafted input to the data hub endpoint and achieve arbitrary code execution on the server, customer data, order records, service log integrations, all reachable. But the detail that separates this story from a standard critical patch is the remediation. You cannot apply a patch and move on. Affected Commerce Cloud environments require a full rebuild and redeployment. The environment has to come down, be rebuilt from a clean state, and be brought back up. That is not a 1-hour maintenance window. That is a weekend project with business continuity implications. Two companion flaws in SAP's manufacturing integration and intelligence platform scored 9.9 and 9.1. For organizations regulated under NIS 2, the disclosure of critical vulnerabilities in production systems triggers immediate reporting obligations, regardless of whether exploitation has occurred. The action: if your organization runs SAP Commerce Cloud, SAP Security Note 3771065 is the priority. Restrict network access to the Data Hub endpoint immediately as a stopgap. Schedule the rebuild. And if you are unsure whether you're in scope for NIS 2 reporting, obligations assume that you are until your legal team confirms otherwise. AI in security. The market for governing AI agents is taking shape. The AI story that closed the week was not a breach and not a vulnerability. It was a market signal. A10 Networks launched its AI gateway platform on Friday, a centralized control plane designed to manage routing, costs and security policy across every AI agent application and large language model an organization runs. At the same time, Hash Security, a startup focused specifically on securing non-human AI agent fleets, closed a $30 million Series A backed by Akamai. Gartner projects that 40% of enterprise applications will embed AI agents by the end of this year. That is up from under 5% in 2025. The speed of that transition means organizations are deploying agents before the governance frameworks exist to manage them. An ungoverned AI agent is an unmonitored network participant. It can receive instructions from untrusted content. It can send data to external destinations. It can take actions under a user's credentials, and it typically does all of this with no dedicated logging, no policy enforcement, and no audit trail. The investment flowing into AI agent security from A10, from Hash, and from the Agentic SOC Alliance announced at Black Hat earlier this month is the maker's way of acknowledging a problem that has arrived faster than the solutions. The products are early, but the need is real. The action to close the week: before your organization approves any new AI tool, application, or agent, ask IT to answer two questions. What data can this agent access? and where does it send its outputs? If neither question has a clear answer, the tool is not yet ready for production deployment. Let me bring the 15 stories together. Monday established the theme: the most dangerous attacker this week was not exploiting a 0-day. They were picking up a phone. Tuesday confirmed it. The breach that cost ING and bore their customers' data happened at a company their customers had never heard of. Wednesday showed what happens when criminal infrastructure evolves faster than law enforcement's response tools. Deadlock built its extortion operation on a blockchain specifically because it cannot be taken. Thursday quantified the problem that sits beneath all of it. 69% of attacks stopped at the perimeter. 37% of in-network attacker moves blocked. 14% of successful intrusions triggering any alert. Organizations have built strong walls. They have almost no visibility inside them. Once these walls are penetrated, they have almost no visibility. And Friday closed the loop in the most instructive way possible. The vendor whose product is your perimeter published 3 patches for authentication flaws in its own security products. While the week's stories covered breaches, ransomware, and supply chain failures, the manufacturer of the firewall itself was the vulnerability on Friday. This is so ironic. Okay. That is FortiGate, if I'm not wrong. The second thread, AI ran underneath all of it. A vendor tool leaked data on Monday. An AI assistant was weaponized on Tuesday. Offensive AI found real vulnerabilities on Wednesday. Industry governance proposals acknowledged the scale of the agent problem on Thursday. And on Friday, the market responded with the first generation of products designed to govern agent behavior at scale. The AI security problem is not coming. It is here, it is documented, and this week's news was evidence of it from 5 different directions. The structural message for medium enterprises this week is this: your perimeter is stronger than it has ever been, and your visibility inside that perimeter is weaker than ever. And the majority of this week's threats, social engineering, supply chain compromise, insider privilege, AI tools, vendor flaws, entered from routes your perimeter was never designed to cover. 3 actions this week demanded. Action 1, patch your perimeter infrastructure this weekend. Specifically, if you use Fortinet products, contact your IT provider today and confirm the status of CVE 2026-26035 on FortiWeb, CVE 2026-70468 on FortiManager, and the FortiClient for Windows Update. If you run VMware vCenter, patching is not enough. Ask your provider to confirm there are no unexpected outbound connections from the vCenter server in the past 3 weeks. And if you run SAP Commerce Cloud, restrict Data Hub network access now and plan the rebuild. These are not scheduled for next month items. They are this weekend. Action 2, map your AI exposure before it maps you. This week's stories covered AI tools leaking data, AI assistants being weaponized, offensive AI finding vulnerabilities, and ungoverned AI agents operating without oversight. Before your next internal meeting, compile a list of every AI tool your organization uses in production, in pilot, and in shadow use outside IT's visibility. For each one, answer what data does it access and where does it send outputs. That list is the beginning of an AI governance program. You cannot govern what you have not inventoried. Action 3, close the visibility gap inside your perimeter. The PICAS report this week told us that 14% of successful intrusions trigger any alert. That means if an attacker is inside your network right now, there's an 86% chance you do not know. The governance action this week is to ask your IT provider in writing what detection capability you have for in-network attacker activity, not prevention, detection. Ask them specifically if an attacker moved laterally between two internal systems last night, would we have an alert this morning? The answer to that question tells you where your next security investment should go. This is the intelligence picture for the week of the 10th the 14th of August 2026. I'm Frederick Wakuliaka. This has been the Frederick Cybersecurity Weekly Business Intelligence Brief. The roundup that turns 15 daily stories into the 3 decisions your organization needs to take before next Monday. The Daily Business Intelligence Brief publishes every weekday. Morning on LinkedIn, the AI Breach Report publishes every Wednesday and Friday. And Issues of the Day, the Weekend Intelligence Brief publishes every Saturday morning. Subscribe to all 3. I'm introducing a 4th one. For those who missed the weekly Monday to Friday, I'll have a newsletter just rounding up everything that happened the previous week. Last week's is coming out, so this week's will come out as well. So that will be the new feature. It's just a summary of all this. But my analysis of the week's events is still going to continue. If this recording has been useful, share it with the person who carries security responsibility without a dedicated security team. This is exactly what this is built for. It is built for the person who carries security responsibility without a dedicated security team. Thank you for listening. I will be back with the AI breach report for Wednesday and Friday of this week. Next.